Hello. Okay, so let's get this going. Bum, 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 bum. There we go. Okay, so this is where we left off last time. I hope the music in the background isn't too loud. So, I'm just quickly getting my references. Where do we have them? There we go. Okay, so what is going to happen today? I'm going to start detailing some more. As you can see, this guy is still very rough. Yeah, that's our current topology, so basically it's just Dynamesh. Let's see. You can trigger your polygroups and your topology by clicking Shift F. So that's what I'm doing here, just turning it on and off. Or there's this button down here that says polyframe. Okay, so let's get going. First, I think I'm going to... Oh wait, no, it's at 2.7 million polygons at the moment. That is plenty of resolution for what we're doing. Just going to cut off just the head by hitting Control Shift and dragging. There we go. It's just the head. Clicking F to frame just the head. Oh, once again. So now it's rotating around the head. And giving it just quick smoothing on top, so all those bumps from the lower resolution get lost. So what I often do is I just use the, what's it called? The clay buildup brush, because I like the texture it gives. Either that, or I use the Move Topological brush to just push things around when I think they're not where they should be. So, let's see. Starting with the eyes. The eyes are important. Oops. I'm using shortcuts most of the time because I'm used to by now. So when you hit B, it brings up the brush menu, and then I go to C for the clay brushes, and you see all the brushes that start with C, and then there's the shortcuts on the top left of each brush. So, and now it's just pretty much painting in the eyelids, also using the Damien standard brush to carve in, pretty much like you do with traditional clay. Yeah, I'll need a little more resolution there later on. I was speaking loud enough? Can everyone understand what I'm saying? No responses so far? No, it's not for a game. It's actually a project I started for one of my Kickstarter, one of my Patreon backers. Because when you pledge for $15, you can decide on a future model to be made. And someone pledged and asked for Torvosaurus, and I chose the lesser known species, which is Torvosaurus gurneyi, as opposed to Torvosaurus tanneri. The latter being from the Morrison Formation, and gurneyi from Portugal, I think. Okay, yeah, so right now I'm just carving in where I think there needs to be more definition of the form. And I have photographs of skeletons open on my second screen, just so I can refer to those whenever I don't know how to continue. I mean, after a while, after making a couple of models, you get to a point where you know your way around theropods, for example. But it can't harm to still check back with your references. I know where most of the things need to go, but I'm still not an expert on anatomy and naming all the different muscle groups, for example. I'm much more of a visual guy, but it's something I really want to change in the future. Okay, so here we have the ear opening, which sits somewhere between, here would be the back end of the mandible, and here's the back end of the cranium, and there's a muscle going down here, and in between that is the ear opening. So, what I often see people do is they make the corners of the mouth way back here in dinosaurs, when actually R.J. Palmer pointed out to me the concept illustrator from Saurian. He said to me that in most birds you can see that the corner of the mouth ends at least underneath or in front of the eye, and all the muscles back here are actually covered in skin. So that's something I'm doing with pretty much all of my models these days, because it also makes a lot of sense, pretty much, because why have muscles exposed too much, especially in animals that are closer related to birds than to crocodiles, for example. Some keratinous covering here. See, that's what I like the clay buildup brush for. It gives this rigid texture on top of here, which looks like keratinous growth, which was possibly some display structure. Let's make those a little less prominent. This is not an Allosaurus after all. Yeah, I like that. So, what's next? You can see from the lower resolutions I still have all those brush marks in here. Okay, and what I also do is I turn on back face mask. I have it put here on the bottom left. It helps me not to... yeah, oops. That was not on purpose. When I use the clay buildup brush on thin walls, for example, it doesn't pull the back end forward as well. For example, if I'm brushing here and I have it turned on, it doesn't pull too much from here. There we go. Okay. I think there's a little too much volume. Oh, okay. Too much volume here. Something I'm still having issues with is carving in between the gums and the lips, where the upper teeth would go. because that's always a bit of a problem for the topology to handle the way I do it. So I need to figure out a different way here. Possibly just using the standard brush instead of Damien's standard, because it carves in a bigger trench, pretty much. And in case anyone's curious, I'm giving all of my theropods lips as far as I can, because my personal take on the whole thing is pretty much any animal that has been proposed to lack lips so far, any theropod, still doesn't show definite proof that it shouldn't have had them. And my current point of view is that if there's no reasonable doubt, then I'm making lips, because only very specialized animals tend to not have them. So all the more basic ones should show some kind of lip covering. It's interesting because the only real vertebrates I can think of that lack lips have interlocking teeth, like crocodilians or river dolphins. They all have some sort of interlocking teeth configurations going on. Okay, some details on the head. I like that so far. It looks like an animal, and that's pretty much what I'm going for. Oh yeah, you may be wondering why I'm talking so much. Oh, thank you, Sora. That's good to know. No one was replying, so I didn't know whether they heard me or not. The reason I'm talking so much is because I got some really great feedback on DeviantArt about my streams, and I'm trying to incorporate that. A few things I wanted to do anyway, like talk more and explain my progress a bit more, but a few other things were pointed out, and I'm always really grateful for good criticism, pretty much. Constructive criticism is something that's really important for becoming a better artist and better teacher at what I do. Yeah, so, and maybe some other people are also interested. I'm most likely starting to do tutorial videos on how to start and how to basically make dinosaur models, because that has been requested. I'm still trying to figure out how I can make those available on Patreon, so it, as dumb as it may sound, but so that it pays off for me, because I just can't do everything for free anymore, sadly. I mean, it would be great if I could, but yeah, that's just not how the world works. Okay, so we have some keratinous coverings. Lips have been, partially refined. Time to work on that palette. Okay, and now I'm using, where is it? Select lasso. There it is. That way, when I hold Control and Shift, I can drag and just select an area. And then I go to solo mode here in the bottom right, so it only shows the parts of this current subtool. So I can clean this up a little. So there's the inner gurneyi, like the inner nostrils. I'll have to adjust them later on, because I'm not quite sure where exactly they sit in Torvosaurus. for now, this is pretty standardized position, I'd say. So nothing too fancy here. Just some additional soft tissue around there. And you'll see me smooth stuff quite a bit to get rid of all those artifacts from the low resolution. I keep saying that, yeah. Just explaining what I do. Okay, turning back off solo mode, I should say, and turning on transparent so I see where the teeth actually are. So I can build up the gums around the teeth a little. Not too much because I don't want to make a fantasy monster. When you're in transparent mode, it ignores the teeth while you work. If you have transparent mode turned off, it will connect the cursor to the topology of the teeth, and I can show you. If I turn this off and you try to draw here, it will pretty much not ignore the position of the tooth and just draw on top of it instead of all around. Okay, where is it? Transparent. If anything I say confuses anyone, please feel free to ask questions so I can try to explain a little better. I'm still getting adjusted to talking while working. Okay, this doesn't look too bad. Connecting the muscles to the gum tissue. Okay. If you hold Control, Shift, and you click, it brings back the whole model. Let's see, quick smooth on top of everything else. Right now you can still kind of see the antorbital fenestrae. They will be covered in scales in the end, so they won't be too noticeable. Okay, let's see. Filling up some form here. And this is what I like about the clay build-up brush. You can quickly build up muscle shapes, for example. Or here, throat pouches and stuff like that. And just smooth over and you have very organic shapes. Okay, this might have been a little too much, so just carve back in there. Okay. Oh. A little too much muscle here, so I'll use, what's it called? H-polish, which just flattens the wherever you click a bit. So when there's a form bulging out far too much, I use that. There we go. That's better. Okay. So I could actually just start refining the arms a bit. I find it very hard to get dinosaur arms, hands and feet and stuff like that as accurate as possible, because either they look too much like human hands to me, or they don't look nearly enough like hands. It's always a bit of a challenge. Where do I have my... okay. So, apparently in Torvosaurus the base is thicker of the claw. Like they also have those big claws that you see in Allosaurus or Spinosaurus, for example. There we go. Whoops. Just a second. Okay, back I am. So, if you want to make the tips of the claws pointier, I use the snake hook brush. You just click and drag a little. And you can use it like a move brush, and when you smooth the point, the tip gets a little pointier. That's looking better. So, you have to be careful with this one because it's really strong. There we go. That looks decent. And do the same for the other ones. Since those claws wouldn't have been in contact with the floor, they wouldn't be worn down quite as much as the claws on the toes. And seeing as how the arms are fairly well developed, they most likely were used for grappling prey. This is just an assumption, of course, but I'd say a very reasonable one. Move topological, smoothing out the tip again. I think a good thing to look at for claw references or hand references are the claws of predatory birds, because they also show those sharp claws that rarely get worn down, and just really good analogy. And just giving it some callus padding to save or to protect the joints and the bones underneath while grappling. There we go. Yeah, that's looking better. Oops. Sometimes it just doesn't get the shift key and just keeps drawing. There we go. Yep. Already like that much better. For the most part, birds are what you want to look into the most. For things like how would they have moved around, how would they have bobbed their head. Actually, that's something I think a lot of upcoming artists don't do nearly enough, possibly because they don't know or because they're too embarrassed by it. I sometimes just move around like an idiot, trying to figure out how the animals would have moved. So I get a sense of motion, a sense of how body parts would interact. And it often helps me with figuring out the form of the animal. Or for example, color choices, stuff like that. There we go. You can still see the metacarpals here, those 3, but I'm going to embed them some more in tissue, because in most animals you don't really see the metacarpals stick out too much, just maybe the joints here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's looking better. Okay. Okay. What I do to define muscle groups or muscles in general, I use a combination of the Damien standard brush to draw guidelines carefully, because that's also a very strong brush. Here you can see I'm drawing out the triceps, and it's a little too strong back here, so I'm just pushing around gently. And to redefine, I use the clay buildup to give it some more volume. Here's the biceps going down here. What I also do is I add a little bit of skin here. Patagium, as you see in birds, for example, or pterosaurs even, or just like most flying vertebrates have that, just as a bit of a reference, because megalosaurs aren't too closely related with flying theropods, but why not just add a little reference there? Okay. Looks like the arm could bulge out some more down here. Okay. Here we go. And some more definition of singular muscles or muscle groups. That's a bit too much. And again, adding some more skin here. I try not to give my dinosaurs too much of a lizard-like feel. Just so their relationship to birds is as clear as possible. I mean, this guy is already looking kind of beefy. Possibly even a little too much. Okay, just giving him some skin here. Skin flap. Okay, that's a very reptilian trait, but trying to not to overdo it. Just using the standard brush and clay buildup to blend it in. So it's not just like tubes under the clay. Yeah, that's a little too much definition here. There we go. Okay. Whoops. That's a little too much. Why is it? Oh, there we go. So. At this stage, I'm still just blocking out form for the most part. Like refining the major muscle groups and figuring out some of the proportions. I mean, for the most part, he's pretty defined already. The basic shape is pretty much down already, but if I see something that I don't like or that doesn't make too much sense, or someone else catches it because I didn't see it, I can still change it. But I'd go to a lower resolution for that. I'm trying to get to keep a little of the hip edge up here. Because in a lot of animals you can still see at least the edges or the corners on large bones. And he's not skinny, but he's not obese either. Those are some leg muscles. Okay. Okay. This can use a little bit more definition. There we go. It's looking not too bad. Always trying to make the legs as bird-like as possible. Oh, oops. Okay, let's refine those toes. Good reference for theropod legs and feet are emus, rheas, and ostriches. Ostriches not so much because they already lost their third toe. They only have like the middle one and the outer one. So that's some increased adaptation for running. Something you see in a lot of running species, that they start to reduce the toe count, like in horses, for example. Okay, again, covering the metatarsals in tissue. It's also important not to make them look too fat. because there's mainly muscles and sinews going down here. This will need quite a bit of cleanup. That's also kind of the fun part, seeing it all come together in the end. Bit more definition on the ankle, so it looks more like a bird ankle. And then here's some stuff underneath going down into the foot pad. This is mainly fat, really. That's what helps the animal not to crush its own bones when walking. Using Damien's standard to carve in here. Sadly, Damien's standard doesn't work too well with Dynamesh pieces because it grabs onto the topology, and when it's uniform, it just looks weird in the end. You guys are awfully quiet today. Okay, our ladies, it's 41 minutes into the stream, and I have already run out of things that I could tell you. Okay, let's increase those fleshy pads down here a little, or quite a lot actually. Large animals tend to have extensive foot pads and toe pads to distribute the weight more evenly. I'm trying to make the toes or the claws look less like grappling devices and more like actually walked on toenails. You're seeing as how they were in contact with the ground all the time, they would be quite worn down, and large ground-dwelling birds tend to have those fairly flat and robust toenails. Okay. I mean, this is still not quite how I want it, but it's getting there. What is this? Why is this so broken? Yeah, that's better. Oh, quick save. Okay. That's not looking too bad. But not broad enough. Okay. One down. Yeah, I can work with that. Yeah, definitely. So, pulling this one up a little. Some more here. Okay, this one needs some love. This looks a bit broken. I mean, obviously, there's still a lot of work going into the whole thing. And this is just fleshing out some of the more important things, so that I don't need to worry about them when I start like the proper detailing process, which would be adding scales and fine wrinkles and stuff like that. Oops. I did a mistake. There we go. Back here. And this is the trim dynamic brush, which lets you basically push back wherever you drag it. And seeing as how these claws would be scratching the floor a lot, I'm just gently cutting off the tips. There. Yep, that's better. Okay. some definition of the fleshy pads. There we go. This is actually not for a game. Not a Trev. This is pretty much a goodie for one of my Patreon backers who pledged $15 and got to choose one of the upcoming models I'd be making, and he chose Torvosaurus, and I decided to make the lesser known species Torvosaurus gurneyi, also because I love James Gurney, and if anyone doesn't know him, you need to look him up because he's a god of paleo art and also god of fantasy art, I'd say. And just generally an amazing artist, amazing person, an amazing teacher. You know, it's all about the details. It's some things the audience will never see, but it would look off if it weren't there. Like if these claws didn't look like bird feet, it just wouldn't look right. Well, thanks, man. That's something I've been working on for the last couple of years, trying to figure out how things work, how things worked, and bringing extinct things back to life. And by now, it's pretty much what keeps me going. You could say it's my profession by now. I'm studying paleobiology here in Vienna. I mean, I'm mainly working, but next to that I'm studying. And it's amazing to me to learn about all these aspects of animals that lived here millions of years ago. Here in Earth, because Austria's fossil record of the Cretaceous or the Jurassic, like in this case, is pretty scarce. I don't even think we have anything all too valuable from the Jurassic. We have some material from the Cretaceous, but mainly it's Miocene, I think, that's important. Miocene, Pleistocene, but nothing of the Mesozoic really. And again, a claw that's not too much in contact with the ground. This is the dew claw, the first toe, something that is often forgotten, and I have been guilty of forgetting it far too often as well. This would be the opposable toe in a lot of birds. Most theropods it would still be in line with the rest of the toes and point backwards instead of forward. Yeah, I can live with that. Let's look at it. Yeah, this is looking alright so far. Might need to adjust the width of the legs a little. Just using a large brush size with the Move topological brush to adjust it. Some weird bends sometimes. Better. It's always important to keep in mind how the bones look and how the bones themselves wouldn't bend underneath. Because with muscles you can always say, it's just slightly flexed or relaxed. But you can't really say that with... Oh, what happened here? You can't really say that with muscles. Apparently I cut in here. There we go. Just adding some slightly more callus-like covering on the knees. That's looking okay. There we go. Making these muscles less bulky, so the legs look more sinewy, more birdy. Yeah, I agree with that. People often only know Allosaurus, and the nickname it has, the Lion of the Jurassic, is really irritating because it gives you this this wrong impression that it was the biggest thing on the block when Torvosaurus was quite an enormous predator. I mean, it's also very, very interesting that especially the Morrison Formation has so many predatory dinosaurs, so many sauropods. It's really a glimpse into a very lush, a very thriving ecosystem, I think. And the best equivalent would be the African steppe and the African savanna for that, where there are various large predators. But if I were to give one of them the name Lion of the Jurassic, it would be Torvosaurus instead of Allosaurus. Allosaurus would be more of a leopard in that regard, and just a very heavy, very enormous leopard. Okay. This is looking decent so far. Let's say we fleshed out the face a little more, fleshed out the hands, the feet, smoothed some muscle groups. Okay, there's a weird bump going on that doesn't make much sense. There we go. It looks much better. You have to keep in mind that a lot of the muscles and stuff like the ribs and the shoulder blades would be embedded in fat and skin, and you wouldn't see as much definition there. Okay. Still not quite happy about this. Oops. Where are we? There we are. Yeah, there. The armpit is not really my friend at the moment. I need to figure out what I want to do here. Let's see. Just embed it some more. wrinkle here. Let's see how that looks. The great thing about ZBrush is that you can just try things out, and if you don't like it, yeah, just go back and undo it, make it anew. Or not undo it, just work on top of it, and not too much effort is lost. And I think it's always important to zoom back out again, take a look from a greater distance so you get a sense of what it would look like from a distance. If it looks natural, if it's too blocky, like for example the shoulder area looks a bit too hard surface like at the moment. Okay. All right. Let's move this down a little. There's too many ridges. I mean, those vertical ridges aren't too much of a problem, because seeing as how the tail would move mostly from left to right, it would, oh wow, that's really pointy. It would create wrinkles over time, especially in a harder skin type like scales. Okay, need to be careful here so don't get issues, but that's for future date. All right. Alright guys, this is where we got today. I know it's a short stream, but I am starving and my food arrived like 45 minutes ago, I think. Okay, saving, and then it's goodbye for now. Thanks everyone for stopping by. I will make sure to upload this video, and if I can manage to do that, the last ones onto YouTube as well, so you guys can rewatch them. And I will possibly get back to working on this guy in a couple of days. I'm moving into a new apartment over the course of this weekend, and I'll be over there starting Monday. And I hope I can make something like a new apartment welcoming stream if I'm not too exhausted from carrying furniture around all weekend. But yeah, thanks for stopping by and catch you soon.